You open your phone to distract yourself from feeling anxious. You scroll for 10 minutes, close the app, and somehow feel worse than before. This isn't about willpower or discipline. This is about something most of us misunderstand entirely. We've been taught that if we're feeling bad, we should do something to feel better. It sounds logical. You're stressed, so you take a break. You're lonely, so you reach out to someone. You're overwhelmed, so you try to relax. But there's a strange pattern that keeps happening. The things we do to escape discomfort often make that discomfort grow. You might assume this happens because you're choosing the wrong coping strategy. Maybe scrolling isn't healthy, but reading would be. Maybe watching videos is the problem, but listening to music isn't. So you swap one behavior for another and wait for relief. But the feeling comes back. Sometimes stronger, sometimes just different. The issue isn't what you're choosing, it's what happens in your brain when you try to avoid something you're feeling. When you experience discomfort, whether it's boredom, anxiety, or sadness, your brain registers it as a problem to solve. The natural response is to move away from it. That response isn't wrong, it's just outdated for the kind of discomfort we face now. Research into emotional regulation shows that avoidance-based coping doesn't reduce emotional intensity over time. It amplifies it. Every time you reach for something to stop yourself from feeling a certain way, you're sending a signal to your brain that the feeling is dangerous. Your brain listens. The next time that feeling shows up, it arrives with more urgency, more weight, more demand for your attention. This is why the second cookie doesn't taste as good as the first. Why the third episode feels emptier than the one before. Why you can spend 2 hours doing something that's supposed to help you unwind and finish feeling like you wasted your evening. You didn't choose the wrong activity. You asked it to do something it was never designed to do. Let's say you're sitting at your desk and you feel a wave of anxiety about a project that's due next week. You don't want to feel it, so you open a new tab and start reading articles that have nothing to do with work. For a few minutes, the anxiety fades. But when you close the tab, it's back. And now there's something else, a low hum of guilt, a sense that you're falling behind. The anxiety didn't go away. It just waited. And while it waited, it picked up reinforcements. Now you're dealing with the original feeling plus the shame of avoiding it. This compounds every time you repeat the cycle. Or maybe you're lying in bed and you feel lonely. You pick up your phone and scroll through photos of people doing things together. You're trying to connect, even if it's just by looking. But the loneliness doesn't shrink. It sharpens, because you're not actually connecting. You're reminding yourself of the gap between where you are and where you want to be. The screen becomes a mirror reflecting back exactly what you're trying to escape. And the more you look, the wider that gap seems to grow. You started scrolling to feel less alone. You end up feeling more isolated than before you picked up the phone. This happens with rest, too. You're exhausted, so you tell yourself you'll take the afternoon off. But instead of resting, you spend 3 hours bouncing between apps, videos, and half-finished tasks. By the end, you're more tired than when you started. That's not because rest doesn't work. It's because avoidance pretending to be rest doesn't restore anything. Real rest requires you to stop running, to actually be where you are, to let your nervous system understand that nothing is chasing you. But when you're scrolling, clicking, switching between tabs, your brain stays in motion. It never gets the signal that it's safe to settle. The uncomfortable part is this. The feeling you're trying to escape isn't the problem. The escape is. When you run from discomfort, you teach your nervous system that discomfort is unbearable. So the next time it appears, your body responds as if it's an emergency. Your heart rate climbs. Your thoughts speed up. The emotion that could have passed in 2 minutes now lingers for 20. Psychologists describe this as experiential avoidance. It's the attempt to control or suppress internal experiences, even when doing so creates more harm than the experience itself. It sounds abstract, but it shows up in the smallest moments. Reaching for your phone the second you feel bored. Saying yes to plans you don't want because sitting with disappointment feels worse. Staying up late because lying in bed means being alone with your thoughts. None of this means you're broken. It means you're doing what most people do. You're trying to feel better using methods that were never designed to work long term. And because those methods sometimes work in the short term, you keep using them. The relief is real. It's just temporary. And every time it fades, the original feeling returns a little stronger, a little more insistent. Here's what makes it harder to notice. The behaviors we use to avoid discomfort often look productive or reasonable. Watching a video about productivity to avoid starting a task, researching solutions to a problem instead of sitting with the fact that the problem exists, talking about your feelings without actually letting yourself feel them. These actions aren't laziness. They're strategies. They're just strategies that don't lead where you think they do. Think about how many times you've looked up how to stop feeling anxious while feeling anxious. You're gathering information, learning techniques, building understanding, it feels constructive. But if you're honest, you'll notice that the research itself becomes another form of avoidance. You're doing something about the feeling without ever making contact with it. You might wonder if this means you're supposed to just sit with every bad feeling and never do anything to change your mood. That's not it. There's a difference between responding to an emotion and running from it. Responding means acknowledging what's there and choosing what to do next. Running means pretending it isn't there and hoping the distraction holds. When you respond, the feeling has room to move. It can rise, stay for a while, and eventually settle. When you run, the feeling gets stuck. It doesn't go anywhere because you won't let it. And your brain, recognizing that this feeling keeps showing up and never getting resolved, starts treating it like a threat. The alarm gets louder each time. This is why some people feel worse after therapy sessions, journaling, or honest conversations. They've stopped avoiding. They've let the feeling be present. And for a little while, that presence feels heavier. Not because something went wrong, because something that was always there is finally being acknowledged. The weight was already in the room. You just stopped pretending it wasn't. The same thing happens when you stop filling every quiet moment. At first, the silence feels louder. The thoughts feel sharper. You might assume this means you should go back to distraction. But what's actually happening is that your nervous system is recalibrating. It's learning that discomfort isn't dangerous, that boredom isn't an emergency, that you can feel something without needing to fix it immediately. Studies on distress tolerance show that people who can sit with uncomfortable emotions without trying to change them experience less emotional volatility over time. Their feelings still arrive. They just don't spiral. The difference isn't in what they feel, it's in how they relate to what they feel. This doesn't mean you'll stop feeling anxious or sad or restless. It means those feelings will stop demanding so much of your attention. They'll pass through instead of setting up camp. And the behaviors you used to rely on, scrolling, snacking, overworking, won't hold the same pull, not because you've developed willpower, because the feelings those behaviors were meant to cover aren't as overwhelming anymore. You start to notice something else, too. The things you do to genuinely care for yourself start to feel different from the things you do to escape yourself. A walk because you want to move feels different from a walk because you can't stand being still. A conversation because you want connection feels different from a conversation because silence feels unbearable. The actions might look the same from the outside, but the internal experience is completely different. You're not failing when you feel worse after trying to feel better. You're noticing something true. The strategy you've been using doesn't match the problem you're trying to solve, and now that you see it, you can't unsee it. That's not comfortable. But it's the beginning of something different. It's the moment you stop fighting your own nervous system and start understanding it. The moment the cycle becomes visible. And once you see it, even if you still fall into it sometimes, you're no longer moving through it blindly. That shift, small as it sounds, changes everything.